The information and footage for the first part of this video I got from a New York Times slideshow article called "How China Turned a City into a Prison." For the second part, I put together several clips from videos I found on this city and other regions that have hundreds of thousands to millions of indigenous people imprisoned in concentration camps located mainly in the Xinjiang region. The Chinese government says these facilities are vocational training centers and used for many purposes such as education, learning Chinese culture and new trades, getting individuals out of poverty, and places to retrain those with religious radical thoughts, as seen in Islamic extremism. This couldn't be furthest from the truth, and no real crimes have been committed, at least with most cases it seems. Innocent people are sent into these camps for at least 1 year against their will, despite what the CCP claims. Families are broken up with little to no explanation on why, and children are sent to orphanages. Many families have zero contact with one another. With the help of AI and a militarized police, these crimes against the people are carried out very efficiently. Chinese propaganda and lies tell the world these are wonderful places where the people are healthy and happy, but even their basic human rights and dignity are stripped from them. I will link and give credit to the sources below and key searches I think are relevant for this topic. For copyright purposes, not everything in this video is included as seen in the original material, sequence of events, and narration. I would love to hear your thoughts below, and I want to thank you for watching. Without further ado, let's get started. How China Turned a City into a Prison by the New York Times. This is Kashgar, an ancient town in northwest China. Xinjiang is in China's far west, but it feels more part of Central Asia. Ethnic minorities, including the Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and Tajiks, outnumber the Han Chinese majority here. They are mostly Sunni Muslims with their own cultures and languages. Hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs and other Muslims from this region have been detained in camps, drawing international condemnation. China has built a vast net of controls that shows the Communist Party's vision of automated authoritarianism. Neighbors become informants, children are interrogated, mosques are monitored. Surveillance cameras are everywhere, in streets, doorways, shops, and mosques. We counted 20 cameras in this stretch of street. Every 100 yards or so, the police stand at checkpoints with guns, shields, and clubs. Many are Uyghurs. The surveillance couldn't work without them. Chinese companies are earning a fortune selling this surveillance technology. They make it sound like a sci-fi miracle, allowing the police to track people with laser precision. At the mosque, worshippers register and go through a security check. Inside, they pray under surveillance cameras that the police can monitor. Tourists have been returning, but many Uyghurs still live in corrosive fear. A careless comment, a vengeful neighbor, a frightened child. All could lead to questioning, searches, and maybe time in an indoctrination camp. For Uyghurs, the surveillance is even more pervasive. Neighborhood monitors are assigned to watch over groups of families, as in this photo. An army of millions of police and official monitors can question Uyghurs and search their homes. They grade residents for reliability. A low grade brings more visits, maybe detention. The police sometimes take Uyghurs' phones and check to make sure they have installed software that monitors calls and messages. In Kashgar, we kept bumping into familiar faces. They were our police minders in plain clothes. Every so often, a police officer in uniform stopped us, searched our phones for pictures, and deleted any they said were sensitive. Sometimes their choices made no sense. One erased this picture of a camel, though I was able to restore it. In China, there are no whys, he said. This is Dilner. She fled Kashgar to Turkey 3 years ago and has lost touch with her family in Xinjiang, but she remembers the searches. They don't care if it's morning or night. They would come in every time they want. Children are interrogated. In the kindergarten, they would ask little children, "Do your parents read the Quran?" Dilner told us. "My daughter had a classmate who said, 'My mom teaches me the Quran.' The next day, they are gone." Orphanages have been taking away the children of detainees. We don't know how many, but the government says that orphanages like this one held 7,000 children across Kashgar alone last year. The old city, a maze-like area of mud brick homes, has mostly been demolished. The government said it was for safety and sanitation, but the rebuilding has also created wider streets that are easier to monitor and patrol. This piece of land in southern Kashgar was empty in August of 2016. Now this is a re-education camp with a capacity of roughly 20,000 people. The government says it is a vocational training center. A recent satellite image shows the camp occupies more than 195,000 square meters. This camp is not the only one growing. These 13 camps in Kashgar have all jumped in size, reaching 1 million square meters last year.
Xinjiang has been building increasingly large compounds, which they call educational transformation training centers. These are really re-education camps, and they're large compounds, sometimes holding thousands of people. They're surrounded by high walls with razor wire. They have guard towers, and they actually seem to be being used to detain anywhere between a few 100,000 and maybe 1 million Uyghurs.
The story is the alleged mass incarceration of Uyghurs, more than 1 million of them, in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
Uyghurs in the United States are getting contacted by Chinese authorities and told to provide information.
Everyone got someone as a hostage by the Chinese government.
I was arrested and put in jail around 2 years. My crime was writing an article titled "The Uyghur Culture in Danger." Local community Chinese police officers started to confiscate passports. He started to arrest the public figures, intellectuals, rich people. My advisors asked me to leave for a while. I was in prison before. I know what is it like.
The Chinese government got someone as a hostage and back home. Like, personally, it's my mother directly.
I'm ethnic Uyghur from East Turkestan. Both my parents are detained in a concentration camp.
I came to the United States in 2015 with my student visa. My father sentenced to 9-year prison and my mom is in concentration camps.
My father Osman Savod and my uncle Absatar Savod detained in a concentration camp.
China used to deny that these places exist. But now we're being given a tour. The message? These are schools, not prisons.
他们受到一定的极端思想感染以后，为了就是把自己思想里面的极端思想的感染程度去除。
But the more we ask, have you been convicted of a crime?
我没有犯罪，我就是犯的错。
Hundreds of thousands of Muslims disappear into giant secure facilities. China has begun taking a few selected journalists inside. Over the past few years, a vast network of high-security facilities has been built across China's western region of Xinjiang, surrounded by high walls, barbed wire, and watchtowers. But in some of the places we're being taken to, the satellite images show that the internal security fencing and what look like watchtowers were taken down shortly before the tours for journalists began. And empty exercise yards have been transformed into sports facilities. But if these are show camps, what might that say about the places we're not given access to? With their watchtowers and barbed wire still in place, they look much less like schools. And we're much less welcome. All of this, China says, is a response to decades of sporadic separatist violence. But Xinjiang's Muslims, the Uyghurs, the Kazakhs and others are being swept up, it seems, for the mildest of beliefs and behaviors. Kima Senbei who now lives in Kazakhstan, spent more than a year in the Chinese camp system just for having WhatsApp on her phone. Only towards the end was she in a facility resembling those we've been shown. Mostly, she was in much tougher camps.
Pictures that China is showing the world of happy Muslims studying hard, dancing even, inside these facilities that they call schools. What do you think?
Ол жақсы деп жіберетіні, бұлар бізге алдын ала айтады. Өйткені ондайды өзіміз өткіздік, мен өзім өткіздім басымнан сол лагерьде жатқан кезде. Егер қай-қайсың аузыңнан шығатын болса, сендер бұдан да қиын жерге кетесіңдер деп алдын ала келіп ескертеді. Сол себепті жаңағы о жердегілердің бәрі қорқады да, солардың айтқаны бойынша істейді. Енді далада билеп, ән айтып.
What, one wonders, might these people have been told by the officials ahead of our visit? This is what it wants the world to see. Offered up as proof that these are not prisoners, but students. They've been convicted of no crime, faced no trial. But we're told China now believes it can determine their guilt in advance.
他没有去杀人的时候，但他已经表现出一种特征，很可能这个人，在过几个星期他去杀人。那么我们是等他犯罪之后，来处理呢，还是说最好在他进行犯罪活动之前，就制止他？
重要的问题，我从一个，走向犯罪边缘的一个人，一个轻微的违法犯罪分子，我回到了正常的社会状态，成了一个遵纪守法的公民。
咱们是为了改变我们学员们的宗教极端思想，这样咱们的学员结业以后就可以直接到就业岗位去就业。
We would call that brainwashing. Isn't about what happens inside.
这个画画只是他的一部分。
It's whether you can leave.
这是他自己选择的一部分，但主要还是通过学习国语、学习法律、学技能，通过这个来完成。
We find some graffiti that reads, "Oh my heart, don't break." We've decided not to use the image to protect whoever wrote it.
We can see the compound's residents. They all work as street cleaners. A sign describing the program calls them Kashgar and Hotan surplus labor. It also lists instructions for how they should conduct themselves. And another poster offers guidelines on how to interact with the local population. This program, and others like it, have led to the relocation of hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs away from their homes and families. But government propaganda openly promotes these as poverty alleviation initiatives.
促进喀什和田地区城乡富裕劳动力转移就业，增加城乡富裕劳动力收入，体现了党中央、习近平总书记和自治区党委政府对喀什和田地区各族群众的关心关怀。
What's at stake here is about more than just putting people into labor programs. The bigger goal is to turn Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities away from their own heritage to be more in line with the rest of communist China. Back at the compound, the rules strictly limit when and where the workers can go. We hear about this as a camera person meets residents in the sleeping quarters.
那你像你们这个晚上，比如说你不在食堂吃饭，你可以出去吃饭吗？周末，没事，现在周末吃可以。不是，我说你来了1年了，你回去过没有？看过孩子没有？孩子，没有。
This man was pressured to come here a year earlier, leaving his family, a wife and young child, behind. His life here includes mandatory Mandarin classes in the evenings. And despite the government's claim that they are lifting these workers out of poverty, he says he's only making a third of what he did back home.
你这个每个月发多少钱呢？2000。像你没来之前，你在家里面收入多少钱啊？去年的2万1件。
According to Sarah Gould, these prisoners taken in for re-education were instead being tortured and abused. She says there were other abuses.
The prisoners were also given injections. They weren't shots that were meant to heal them. They were injections that were like torture. They were used to take control of their minds. The people in the camps had no strength to rebel.
In Istanbul, Gulbahar Celilova told us that she was also subjected to injections in the camp where she spent more than a year.
They injected us from time to time. We had to stick our arms out through a small opening in the door once a week. We soon realized that after the injections, we didn't get our periods anymore. Mine stopped 1 month after the start of my detention. Then we no longer thought about anything. We no longer thought about our relatives, our families. I didn't know where I'd been born. I felt like I'd always lived there. We no longer felt the cold and the hunger. It's as if we were just pieces of meat that had been put there.
Beijing denied the existence of these camps for months, but eventually recognized them and gave them a legal framework. We showed this video to Gulbahar Celilova.
The camps where I stayed were not at all like that. We never left our 20-meter squared room. In this, they showed 10, 12 people and they said, look how well they're doing. But the people in all the other camps are suffering. I've just left a camp and I can tell you it's nothing at all like that. It's a lie. It's not true at all.
Gulbahar describes women held against their will and arbitrarily imprisoned. In this notebook, she records the name of her fellow prisoners and the reasons for their arrest.
As soon as I remember a name, I write it down. Alia, locked up because she traveled to Turkey. Fatima, 52 years old, English translator, that's why she was arrested. Anisam, arrested because she kept a photo on her phone of a girl praying. Magarfret, she was arrested for wearing a scarf.
Gulbahar Celilova was the director of an import-export company and was in China on business. She was released because she has Kazakh nationality, and the authorities there put pressure on Beijing to set her free.
I was doing business in China for 20 years. I'm not a terrorist. I'm just a normal businesswoman and a mother of 3 children. When I got home, my children told me they had never stopped fighting to get me out. I was lucky to get out of a place where they'd accused me of terrorism. They took me into a secure room with heavy metal doors, which made a lot of noise when they were opened. The room was around 20 meters squared, and there was no window. There were about 40 women inside. Half of them were standing up. The others were lying on the ground against each other. All of them wore heavy chains on their feet.
In the cells, Gulbahar says conditions were difficult, with a lack of basic hygiene, water, and food. Seragul Sotbey is Chinese of Kazakh ethnicity. In November 2017, she was forcibly taken to a camp and made to teach Mandarin to detainees. Released 4 months later without knowing why, today she lives in exile. This is the first time she's spoken in front of a camera.
Every day I had to make the prisoners work. I needed to make them say hundreds of times, thousands of times, I am Chinese, I am proud of China. They had to say these sentences standing up, saying them loudly, and I had to guide them thousands of times. They had to pronounce their love for Xi Jinping and for the Communist Party. Everything I taught was recorded, and the policeman stayed at the door.
She says there were 2,500 detainees of Kazakh or Uyghur ethnicity inside the camp. On several occasions, Seragul says she witnessed violence.
Sometimes when I was giving the class, the armed policeman burst into the classroom. 2 or 3 people would be forcibly removed from among the detainees. I never saw those people again. Sometimes in the evening at dinner, we would hear people calling out for help. Those voices, they were the saddest voices I've ever heard. We thought they were being tortured.
The Uyghurs are constantly searched. And the contents of their mobile phones checked regularly. Xinjiang is at the forefront of a new facial recognition system now deployed across China. Hundreds of thousands of cameras watch every street and every mosque. They can even be seen on the inside of taxis and the entries to public toilets. For Uyghurs, life under surveillance is no longer their only burden. Now they risk being sent to the camps at any time. They're not alone to suffer this threat. All minorities present in Xinjiang suffer from the same repression. The Kazakhs, the Tatars, and the Kyrgyz. Doors of shops and houses have been sealed up. All the families who lived here, in this street in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang, have been arrested. The house next door is closed, isn't it? Why?
Yes, this house here. And the one next door is the same, they're closed.
Where did the people go?
The people?
A neighbor interrupts, but refuses to be filmed. Do you know why these houses are closed?
Yes, they've gone to Dabancheng.
Dabancheng is the camp we've tried to get near, where 10,000 people could be locked up.
So many people have been sent there.
The man won't say any more and signals for us to leave. This is rare footage. We are in Khotan, in the south of the province. There are at least 8 camps in this city. This one looks brand new. The windows are closed and barred. Do you know why your father is there?
I don't really know.
A few meters away, this man also says one of his family's locked up. Do you know people inside?
Yes, my big brother is in there.
Why?
He's studying.
But why was he sent here?
We don't know.
Do you know what he's studying?
The Communist Party.
We weren't able to go inside the camp. But in the west of Xinjiang, one Chinese journalist was able to film with a hidden camera. In August 2018, the building was still under construction. Since then, more than 1,000 people have been locked up there. Inside, there appear to be dormitories that looked like prison cells. On each floor, 3 classrooms, like this one with slogans on the wall. Follow the directives of President Xi Jinping on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. Settled in the Paris region for 10 years, this female engineer was trapped by her former boss in December 2016. He called her on numerous occasions to get her to return to China to sign some papers so she could receive a pension. Gulbahar Haitiwaji did it. At the time, few people knew of the existence of the camps.
He didn't stop calling for a week. He had a very hard tone and he said, "Come back. You don't have any other choice. Come back. You have to sign these papers. We can't wait any longer. You have to come back." She took a ticket for 2 weeks and was supposed to return on the 10th of December.
On arrival in China, her passport was confiscated and her husband and 2 daughters lost all contact with her. They had no news for 6 months.
Well, about 6 months afterwards, my aunt called and said my mother was in a re-education camp. I believe she said she's in re-education, she's in training or at school. But we never realized it would go so far and that it would last so long with all these camps and millions of prisoners. We never imagined that.
Today they have a visit from another Uyghur from Finland. For several months, Halmurat Harry has been traveling the world to meet the diaspora. For 2 years, the parents of this GP, both Uyghur officials, have been locked up in a camp. They have since been freed and placed under house arrest. But Halmurat has not stopped fighting and has become one of the spokesmen of his community. Today at 35, he lives in the Helsinki suburbs with his wife, who's also Uyghur, and their 2 daughters.
We really enjoy to live here, and we feel at home here. Not because the culture and everything, because we enjoy freedom here. We live with our human dignity, human rights.
His last trip to Xinjiang was in summer 2016. That's the last time he saw his family.
It's me and my beloved wife. It's Uyghur traditional clothing. We took the picture when we last time visit our parents in Turpan.
Last year, he created an association to identify the victims of Chinese internment camps.
I want to let the world know what happened to my people, to my parents.
In this video, he calls on all Uyghurs who know people imprisoned to bear witness. A few days after posting it, he received hundreds of replies.
Look, we have so many, like I can do it even like this, it doesn't end, like almost 400 videos and other testimonies.
Like this little girl who had had no news of her father. Or this young man with American nationality.
Help release my father, a known Uyghur journalist, editor-in-chief from China's internment camps. He was detained since December 2017, and I have confirmed this information from multiple sources.
I see that I'm not alone. It makes you feel so sad, you know, because you can feel the pain. You have exact same struggle, exact same pain in you, and you can feel their pain, and it makes you so emotional. Sorry.
Halmurat regularly organizes protests to raise public awareness. In their hands is a flag forbidden in China, that of Oriental Turkestan. Some Uyghurs think that the survival of their people relies on the independence of their region. Communist China has administered the province since 1949.
Is it the solution? That's a solution we will like to have. The reason is we have established independence in the past within the 20th century itself. First time in 1933 and second time in 1944. So we're not a country that has never established independence or never were able to run a government.
There aren't many people who can speak up for us. They are suffering extremely. He's dying. I'm not exaggerating.
Gathered here, Halmurat and the others promised to carry the voice of their community wherever they go, and not lose their loved ones to the biggest mass internment of the 21st century.